couldn't make it. My mother wasn't well. And can we have the same arrangement?
It's only starting this Wednesday.
Oh, didn't start yet? Oh, good.
This Wednesday.
Okay. So I can give your son the money again?
Yes.
Thank you. At 7:30, is it?
Yeah, this Wednesday, 7:30.
Thank you. Okay, good. Bezrat Hashem.
Bezrat Hashem is correct. Okay, now I'm not clear where this is. Oh, you got it. Hey, Andrew got it. All right. Just wait a moment. Who else is coming here?
What did you get, Andrew? Oh,
you
yes.
got the textbook. Ahuva, you got the textbook?
Oh, yes. I've already started reading it.
Oh, amazing. Okay, you're ahead of me.
Uh-oh. I doubt that.
Well, all right. Okay, perfect. Beautiful, beautiful. Let's, oh, okay. Oh, Irma, welcome. And we have Bubby and Zadie coming. Wow, such young Bubby and Zadie. Such young Bubby and Zadie. I don't know if we can believe what I read there.
Thank you, Baruch Hashem.
Reggie, welcome, welcome.
Hello, Rabbi.
Hello. Okay. Let us begin. Oh, 1 second. More people coming, so I guess we should. Hello, Celia.
Hi. Hi.
Okay. Tim, welcome. And Jeff. Oh, nice. Welcome, Jeff. Heather.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Welcome. Thank you for joining. And Alice, thank you for joining. All right. Perhaps at the end of the class, I'd like to, we had a wonderful Farbringen on Friday. I mean, wonderful. I don't know, yeah, maybe those are the right words. I'm not certain. But, you know, what happened in Meron and the tragedy, just perhaps to tie in everything together. But, you know, let us, yeah, we should do that. All right. Good Tavach, Shavua Tov. A good week to everybody. Should be a wonderful week. And we're going to dedicate this learning for the neshamas that passed on in Eretz Yisrael. And for those that need a refuah shlema, speedy recovery. And hopefully we can tie in some of the learning that we're going to go through, and that we can tie in some of the ideas together. So I have a question for everybody. Like, what are you doing here exactly? Why are you here? Leah, Leah, go ahead. I'm listening. You have to unmute yourself. Whoever wants to speak. I muted you so you wouldn't have back. Huh?
Listening to you. We're here.
I want to learn. I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to get better.
You want to learn, you want to grow, you want to get better. Okay. Excellent.
We want to hear you speak.
Why?
And I want to hear you speak. So why do you want to learn Torah? How come?
I want to know.
Because God instructed us to.
Oh, okay. Anybody else? What else? God instructed us. Look at that, a real Kabbalah Solnik.
I want to make this place. I want to make this place a place that Hashem would want to come to. So if I get better, make other people better, and then Hashem maybe will come down.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Anybody else want to share something?
To learn, then apply.
To learn and apply. Lil Lamed Velasquez, right? We say in the davening every day. Excellent. Wow. Okay, we could shut the books and we could go home now. No? Okay. All right, we won't do that. Okay, so this week we have Parsha's Chazak. Chazak, V'nis Chazak. We're going to finish the third book. Whoops. One moment, I lost. There we go. Okay. I lost the vision of seeing you. A double portion, Parsha Bechukosai. And as a result of a double parsha, we finish off the book of Vayikra, the third book. And we're going to be strong, and be strengthened through this process.
My son's parshas.
Oh, yeah? Okay, beautiful. So the second parsha is called Bechukosai. Let us, give me a moment. Let me get this in front. Hold on. Give me just a brief moment. Okay. All righty. Okay. I'm somewhat technically challenged, but oops. There we go. All right, please. What are you doing? There we go. Oh. Where'd it go? Hey. Okay. My apologies.
I think Reggie helped you last time. I think Reggie's a techie.
Yes. Yeah, Reggie is a techie. Yeah, but sometimes you got to help yourself. Okay. There you see it now?
Yes.
Oh boy. All right. Okay, so from this week's Parsha. If you follow my statutes and observe my commandments and perform them, I will give you rains in their time, the land will yield its produce, and the tree of the field will give forth its fruit. So, as always, we're very exacting in the language. And the word Bechukosai here means statutes, right? What does that mean, statutes? Well, there are three types of mitzvahs. As we see here in Rabbeinu Bechaya, he says the verse mentions three categories of mitzvahs, namely the rational, traditional, and beyond reason. Mishpatim are rational laws handed down to us from God, whereas edus are traditional rites that bear testimony to God's presence and the creation of the world, like Shabbos and holidays. Chukim are those statutes that do not have any apparent reason. So these are the three different types of categories. I'm sure we've learned this before. So this latter category, chukim, right? Observances that are beyond rationale, right? What's the challenge there? Anybody?
We don't understand them, and we still have to do them.
You're just accepting it, right?
Right. So what's the problem with that?
Not easy.
Why?
We like to have a reason. We like to understand what we're doing and why.
Oh, because? Why?
We're supposed to learn and do. It's hard to learn if we don't understand it.
Well, because God gave us a mind, and he wants us to use the mind, right? Mm-hmm. So when we don't get something, when we don't understand it, that is troublesome to the human being and the human condition, right? It becomes troublesome for an individual. So as a result, the Midrash says, this is the statute, chukat, of the Torah, because Satan and the nations of the world taunt Israel, the Jewish people, saying, what is this commandment? And what purpose does it have? Therefore, the Torah uses the term statute. I have decreed it. You have no right to challenge it. Well, that's difficult. It's difficult firstly, for ourselves, but even more so, as people, we don't like to look foolish in front of the eyes of others. And when we're doing something that sounds, senseless or beyond rationale, that's a difficulty. We're challenged, right? So in this week's Parsha, the term chukah, the Bechukosai, is being used, correct? And promising us that when we follow the statutes of the Torah, which is specifically speaking about studying Torah. So what does that mean? Studying Torah only of those things that are statutory laws and I will get reward? Because the rest of the following verse tells us about the reward we're going to receive. So only when I am studying, for example, like the red heifer, or if I'm studying other mitzvahs that are beyond rationale, that then I'll get reward? How about the rest of the Torah when I study it? Why wouldn't I get there? Well, so the answer then is obviously, is what? Anybody? What's the answer? Obviously, all mitzvahs must have something in them that is beyond rationale, not just the ones that are super rational, again, like shatnez, like the red heifer, like even kosher. Even those mitzvahs that make sense to us, right? For example, not to murder. Ultimately, why do we not murder? Like Andrew said earlier, because God said so, right? Well, coming to learn Torah, right? So the Rebbe says in the Sikha, all mitzvahs, even rational ones, must be fulfilled not only because we appreciate their reasoning, but rather because they were given at Sinai with a basic sense of commitment. Now, why would that be necessary? That when it comes to murder, theft, or other rational mitzvahs, that we need to fulfill them not only because it makes sense to us and we might be, feel that way. Why is it necessary to fulfill it on this level at the same time? Anybody? So the Rebbe tells us, continuing the Sikha, first, a mitzvah observance is predicated on the personal conviction as to their sound logic. It will ultimately lead to a situation our sages describe. Today, your Yetzer Hara tells you to do X, tomorrow Y, until you're serving idols outright. So now the Rebbe explains, what does that mean? Inasmuch as the Yetzer Hara is the one telling you to follow mitzvahs, namely because it makes perfect sense, not simply because God instructed you to do so. You are essentially unmooring yourself from God. This primes you to thereafter fall even lower until the very abyss of idolatry. So the first point that the Rebbe is making is what? Your Yetzer Hara is telling you, do the mitzvah. You know why? Because it makes sense. Don't murder, don't steal, don't whatever. Because it resonates with you. I get it. So I'm going to do it. That's the Yetzer Hara talking. Why? Because if it's Yetzer Tov, if it's your good inclination, you're a godly soul. So your godly soul wants to connect to God. But here you are disconnecting it from God. You're doing it because of the reason for it. You're doing it because of the reason. So that's a disconnect. Right? So that is the way to get you down a slippery slope. Do it for your own self-fulfilling reasons. Ultimately, you're going to go down this slippery slope and you'll end up in real idolatry. So that's one reason why we need to do even something like murder or theft and the like, ultimately because God so dictates. The second, the mitzvah observance left to rational alone is missing a crucial element of religious life, God. To leave God out of any part of our religious commitment is senseless at best. And as such, everything we do must be undergirded by the sense of blind faith, because God said, that's why I don't murder. Is that clear? The Rebbe continues. Another reason why the mitzvah observance must be predicated on logic and reason alone, predicated on logic and reason alone, even if we will argue that the person will indeed fulfill the mitzvahs, they will still lack a critical element, the sentiment that there is something from and connect one with God, a part of the Torah. So there's a blind faith, but there's also now that to connect with God. Any questions? Is it clear? Does anybody have a difficulty with what we just said, though? To put it into context of the Parsha in particular. We just spoke about what? Mitzvahs, that you should do them because God said, right? You can have the rational understanding and appreciation, but it shouldn't be limited to that. Right? And we gave various reasons. But our verse in the Torah, what is it speaking about? Anybody? Is it speaking about keeping mitzvahs? If you will go in my statutes, what is that in reference to? You mentioned earlier. Sorry, Celia?
Laws.
It's in reference to the study of Torah.
Okay.
The study of Torah. So if it's in reference to the study of Torah, it's not in the reference of keeping mitzvahs. So we can understand keeping mitzvahs that you have to do because God said so, for the various reasons we just gave. But that all falls apart here, because that's not what we're speaking about. We're speaking about fulfillment of study of Torah, as Rashi explains.
Rabbi, I have a question.
Sure.
I mean, we were told to do and then learn, but if we don't have any ability to understand or learn the four chukim that we don't understand, isn't that contradictory? We can't fulfill what we've been told to do.
Let's get back there later. Okay, good question. Excellent question. Let's go through this process here and then we'll be able to answer that. Okay? Excellent question. So look at what Rashi says on, if you will follow my statutes. Remember, those are the first words of the second parsha of this week. If you follow my statutes, I might think that this refers to the fulfillment of mitzvahs. However, when scripture says, and observe my commandments, mitzvah fulfillment is already stated, because that's the next part of the verse. So what does it mean? What is the meaning of, if you follow my statutes? It means that you must toil in Torah study. So what comes out now is that we're talking about Torah study, that you're being promised a reward for learning Torah, right? But the problem over here is, what does it mean, the term Bechukosai? What is that idea? Now, what's the whole point of learning Torah? How do you fulfill the mitzvah of learning Torah? Anybody? How do you fulfill the mitzvah?
Learn and do.
No.
Or do and learn.
No. By understanding what you're learning. If we're learning right now and you don't understand, you don't fulfill the mitzvah. You can't make a bracha, birchas haTorah, on the oral Torah if you don't understand it. So one needs to understand. That's the idea of Torah. Because how could you, as Andrew, as you said, how could you fulfill doing the Torah if you don't learn it and understand what you need to fulfill? So Torah means, study of Torah means that I need to understand what I am learning. Yet the verse says, Bechukosai, that it has to be beyond logic. Well, what does that mean? How am I engaged in Torah study beyond logic if the whole point is that I need to understand the reasoning behind it? It seems to be a contradiction in terms. When you speak about mitzvahs and you're going to say Bechukosai, that every mitzvah, and that's the exercise we just went through, every mitzvah you have to do how? How do you have to do every mitzvah? Ultimately, because God said so. So in reference to mitzvahs, the word Bechukosai makes sense. But as we just learned from Rashi, that's not what the verse is talking about. It's not in reference to doing a mitzvah that you should do it beyond reason and logic. It's in reference to Torah study. But Torah study has to be something you understand. Again, the halacha is that if you study Torah and you don't understand Torah, the oral Torah that is, you can't make a blessing. You don't fulfill the mitzvah. So I hope you're understanding right now. Otherwise, you better ask me to clarify, because otherwise you're not fulfilling the mitzvah. Is that clear? So now we have to understand why that term is being used in reference to Torah. Ahuva, go ahead.
Well, I'm just wondering, is it like not just understanding with our minds? There's another way of understanding.
Go ahead.
I mean, you know, like sometimes it's just from like experience, and it isn't something you can put into words.
So let me put it into words. What you don't want to put, what you say you can't put into words.
Please.
Okay. So the Alter Rebbe, he says, this is teaching us how we need to learn. The word chok comes from the word carving, engraved. We need to learn in a way, you know, you can learn in a way that you're learning, you're understanding, but it's not engraved in you. It's not really part and parcel of you. You understand. But there's a lot of things you understand. There's a lot of things that you get. So you understand this too. No. What this means is it needs to be carved out in us. So much so that who understands? Who? What do you think? not just my godly soul understands, because that's easy for the godly soul to appreciate and understand words of Torah, that even my animal soul gets it. Because it's even carved in so deeply within me, right, that it also then, as a part of that understanding, now seeks more. Let's see it in the words of the Alter Rebbe. The words, if you follow my statutes, Bechukosai, can be interpreted by the means of a metaphor from a vessel that needs to be carved out from the inside. So too, we must carve out a space in the animal soul so it can thereafter follow. Bechukosai telechu. The next word is telechu, means to go, to follow, right? To follow, namely, to mature to the state of love, to be included in the oneness of God. Carving out the inside is accomplished through practical mitzvahs of chukim, categories such as paraduma, tzitzis, tefillin, which have no logical reason whatsoever. This is also because these mitzvahs, in fact, stem from the lofty place that is beyond reason. They are the raw will of God himself. And it is through these mitzvahs that flow from such a lofty space that a space is carved out inside the animal soul. The soul is engraved with a love for God, for his or her very soul to be included in the oneness of God through these mitzvahs. So what is the Alter Rebbe telling us over here? We got to learn in a way that we talk to that part in me that, is just a comfort creature, seeking just, whatever self-fulfilling, self-directed enjoyment in life and so on. And I have to impact me in such a way that my animal soul not only understands and appreciates, but now even wants itself to do the mitzvahs as a result. And not just to do any mitzvah, but even to do those mitzvahs that are beyond reason. That's truly engraved within the person, right?
Why do we have to get rid of our animal soul if it affects us that much? I mean,
why do we have to get rid of? We're not getting rid of the animal soul.
I mean, why try to say it's like that? Why do like a tzaddik? He doesn't have the animal soul, but if you can affect it, why even get rid of it?
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The tzaddik is transforming the animal soul. So we're not going to transform it, but at least we can get it on side. That's what we're trying to do. We say in the Shema every day, you should love the Lord your God with all your heart. And it should say b'chol libcha. It's the proper Hebrew spelling, but there's an extra base there. So as commentaries say, it means two hearts, because we have the heart of the divine soul, which naturally loves God, but we have to be attuned to it and bring that out. But then we have to be able to talk to the other heart, which is the animal soul's heart, that it too has to have a love of God. Now, there'll be a difference between the kind of love each one has, right? One will be just as an end in itself. One will be a means to some end, fine. But we need to bring that on board. So how do we do that? So here the Alter Rebbe is saying, talk to it about through Torah study, that you're learning in such a way that you're engraving inside of you, deeply within inside of you, that even your animal soul also is seeking to connect to God, because it appreciates the oneness, and so much so that even ready to do the mitzvahs that are beyond logic, because it's so much engraved in a part of us. Okay, is that clear? So then, this ties in with what Rashi said. What did Rashi say? That you should be amelim b'Torah, you should be toiling in Torah. In other words, I'm experiencing this now. I've got to do something and it's against my nature in Torah study. A certain thing I've got to do, and it's against my nature, and I'm toiling to do it. it's a real effort. God willing, I'll accomplish it. Right? What do I need to do? The toil means you're so deeply engaged in it that it's engraved and becomes a part of you. That's the idea. In other words, when you write, when you take a pen or an ink and parchment, you have the parchment, you have the ink, two separate things. When you take a paper and pen, you have the paper and what you write on it. They're two separate things. You can even erase it, right? It says here engrave. Engrave means that it's literally a part of you. It's not separate from you. And know that you're learning in such a way that even if you have a heart of stone, because you toiled in this, it's going to penetrate because you did this with great vigor. Where do we have this concept of that it's going to penetrate to such a deep, profound way? What story do we know of a great sage that became one of the greatest of all times? It's probably maybe of the sages of the Tanoim, of those of the Mishnah, might be the most well-known of all. And what's his name? Sorry?
Ravi Akiva?
Exactly, Ravi Akiva. At 40 years old, he was an ignoramus. What did he see? What did he experience? As a drip of water bore a hole in a stone, because it dripped and dripped and dripped and finally bore a hole. So he said to himself, Torah is much more powerful than the drip of that water. Then the power of Torah will drip upon my brain. It will bore a hole in it and I will get it. And he did. So much so that he had 24,000 students. Right, connected with Lag Boimer, of course, because they had died out because of the plague, which had stopped on Lag Boimer. So what does that mean? What did he do? He toiled in it. What does toil mean? Toil means that it's so much a part of you that you engage in such a way that it's changing you from within. What's the within? That even your animal soul gets it. And what does that mean exactly? That even your animal soul gets it. What does it mean that you toil in such a way? We all experience sometimes a blockage that when we learn something, we have a difficulty to get it. How come? Why? Maybe we're not that smart and it's hard. Or maybe our heart is maybe somewhere else in the moment. Maybe we have some worries on our heart and we're not really totally engaged. But what the Alter Rebbe is telling us over here, and what the verse is telling us in this week's Parsha, is that if we are totally engaged in a way that it's carved out within us to such a degree that even the animal soul wants it, we won't have any blockage. We won't have. We'll be able to succeed in learning and understanding. It will bore a hole. Ravi Akiva is proof positive for that, for us. Is that clear? Any questions on that? Any comments about that?
If it all worked out like that, wouldn't the Mashiach come?
Okay, we need to work it out for ourselves, right? We need to learn in such a way that I'm one with it, right? That it's not again, like ink on parchment, that are two things coming together, but something that's engraved, that's carved in the mug, right? It means it's part and parcel of it. And it's engraving on the inside, as the Alter Rebbe says, meaning the inside is engraved on the animal instinct within me. And it too gets it, so much so that it then has the love of Hashem. That's the way. Lilmoid lamed v'lasos. That's what the Parsha is telling us. That's one explanation.
Rabbi, I was just thinking,
go ahead, Liana.
When you were speaking about how important it is to teach Torah to children, because they don't have baggage, they don't have to unlearn anything. Their heart is open to receive
right.
Torah.
Yep. Right. We have life's experiences, and those experiences sometimes make it difficult that our minds are focused and our hearts are without worry and, without an anxiety. We have those issues. And therefore, when we learn, it's hard to be fully engaged. And that's what we need to overcome. That's exactly what the Alter Rebbe is telling us. Then we won't forget it because it's a part of us. It's incorporated, and it's because it's real for us. It's not just an idea. The Rebbe offers another explanation. And that is that, of course, we have to learn Torah in a way that we give ourselves over in such a way that we understand it and it becomes incorporated in a part of us. But at the same time, it also needs to lie beyond reason. And that's what the chok means. Remember, that was the original explanation. Chok means a statute, a law, like the red heifer, that's beyond reason. And we need to study in such a manner. Now, what does that mean exactly? How do you study in a way that you're trying to learn it and get it, but yet at the same time, it's beyond you? What does that mean? Okay, so let's see the Rebbe's teachings over here. Bechukosai are the mitzvahs called chukim. In the context of Torah study, this means, right? So we understand what it means in the context of mitzvahs, right? That not to murder. Why? Ultimately, because God said so. Yes, we also appreciate and understand and feel towards it, but that's not sufficient. God said so. What is the context of chukim in Torah study? This means that our Torah study must be like chukah, like fashion, namely with raw commitment. Well, it's true that we must understand Torah with our human intellect. That alone is built on the foundation of faith. Namely, the drive to understand doesn't flow from the personal enjoyment, rather simply because God instructed that we must study with our own intellect. Such an attitude leads us to toil in Torah. Namely, they learn beyond their natural tendency. Motivated purely by personal enjoyment, Torah study would be limited to the contours of what the person enjoys and would never lead to true toil, right? Think about it. If I'm doing because I enjoy, well, this I enjoy a lot, so I'm going to give myself over more. This I don't enjoy as much, maybe, so I'm not fully engaged, right? Because it's based on me and my enjoyment. Here it's saying, no. It can't be based on that, your Torah study. It needs to be based on raw commitment. What's raw commitment? God wants me to do this. I've got to rise above what I am just enjoying, and this is what he needs me to do. This is the deeper idea of what chukim means over here, right? Think about it. Any other academic discipline, whether you're learning psychology from Freud or from Viktor Frankl, each one is going to go and learn in psychology the path that they have pleasure in. You're not going to give yourself over raw commitment to a discipline that you don't find enjoyable or doesn't, fit into your understanding of things. You're not going to do that, right? So Torah is rich with scholarship. So you have Talmudic scholarship, you have mystical scholarship, you have Pshat Rem is Jewish Soid. Pshat Rem is Jewish Soid. You have 4 different levels of Pardes, of the orchard of Torah. And, I'll devote myself to this. Talks to me. I like the simple meaning to understand Rashi. But what are we saying over here? No. You're doing that only because that's what brings you pleasure, intellectually, emotionally, psychologically, or whatever manner. We need to rise beyond that. We have to understand that through this, what are we actually doing? We have a divine connection. Not even angels are able to perceive the secret of God's words etched into their very being. Certainly then, we simple humans cannot dare to perceive or comprehend your greatness. If an angel, which has no evil temptations, cannot perceive you, certainly we who possess evil urges and at times defy our own creator, we dare not assume that we understand God. How can our understanding, which can be swatted away like a mosquito, find grace in your eyes to gain any understanding of you? The sum total of what we know is that we don't know you at all. From everything we work so hard to understand, we know only that you exist. Sefer Yikrim brings out the following. From this, we may get an idea of the great joy and delight that God has in the apprehension of his own essence. For he has an infinite number of perfections, and each one is infinite in worth. Therefore, no other being can apprehend his essence. As a wise man said, when they asked him if he knew the true essence of God, if I knew him, I would be him. In other words, there is no one who comprehends his essence except God, though his essence, his existence is evident most plainly to all from his acts. Praise be to him who surpasses us with his perfection, who is hidden from us despite his intense visibility, as the light of the sun and its agreeableness are hidden from those of weak sight. Their defective understanding does not prove his non-existence. The most that we can understand about God is that we cannot understand him, as the wise man said. The sum total of what we know of you is that we do not know you. The Alter Rebbe says this in Tanya. His essence of being and knowledge are all absolutely one, without any composition. Therefore, just as it is impossible for any creature in the world to comprehend the essence of the Creator and his being, so it is impossible to comprehend the essence of his knowledge, which is one with God himself. It is possible only to believe with faith that transcends intellect and comprehension. So what do we understand? That we really do not understand, right? So are we meant to try to understand Torah? Are we meant to learn Torah to try to understand it? The answer is yes and no. We need to break our heads to try to understand it. But in the end, what do we need to know? That we don't understand it. Because it's God in his infinite wisdom. So before I even begin to learn Torah, I need to know that what am I doing? Attaching myself to God, period. In the act of learning, I'm attached to God. The second point is that I have to now use my human rationale to understand as best as I can. But the first thing I need to know is that what I'm engaged in is something that's holy, divine, ultimately way out of my range. And then break my head and try and get it. Understand it, comprehend it. When you think about it, a complete paradox. And the more you will get, the more you will understand that you don't understand. Not that you get more. You just realize that his wisdom is just so much more out of reach because you are now have reached a level of understanding. Because that will just bring you to a place that you see that there's still so much more. So the ultimate purpose of knowledge is to not know. The ultimate purpose of learning is not about what I learn and know so I could do. The ultimate purpose is the learning itself, because it brings a connection to God himself beyond that which I understand.
But didn't the tzaddikim and Moses reach that knowledge which is beyond our comprehension?
Knowledge that's beyond our comprehension.
Didn't the tzaddikim and Moses and all these great
I mean, they get obviously far beyond us, but they also they came to a point each time that they realize whatever they know, there's so much more. God is infinite. And all of that was predicated, all of their learning and their grasping is predicated on that there's something here that I am committed to that's beyond the grasp.
Thank you. Okay.
That's the point over here. Before we learn, we're committed to learning not because Torah is going to help me to become a better person. Torah is going to help me to understand wisdom of life. That's true, all those things. But that's not why. Bechukosai means it's a statutory law. The first point that the Alter Rebbe brought was, I got to learn in such a way that it becomes me. It's engraved with me. The teachings become a part of me so much so that my animal soul appreciates it and wants then to be connected as a result and do even a mitzvah that is beyond logic. Now the Rebbe is saying, the Bechukosai means that the actual learning, right, is beyond logic. What does that mean? That before I learn and break my head, which I need to learn and break my head, but there's something that it has to come before that, is my understanding that it's not about breaking my head and getting it. It's about connecting to something, to God, that is beyond that which I'm going to get and understand. There's a holiness, there is I'm getting connected to God himself through this, something beyond. And I have to learn in such a way that is the goal. Connection itself, that is beyond rationale. So in other words, right now, we wanted to learn, and we want to come away knowing something. That's the byproduct. What's the product? The very fact that we devote ourselves to give ourselves over to something that's beyond us, God's Torah, to learn, period. So Andrew, like you said in the beginning, because that's what God wants, right? But it's not just because God wants, but it's something ultimately that is beyond our grasp, because it's God's wisdom. He and his wisdom are one. Just as God is beyond our grasp, so his wisdom ultimately will be beyond. So why start? Because in the engagement itself, that I understand that it is something beyond, there's a connection period. Now, break your head, understand, and make it engraved in a part of you. How are you going to be able to make it a part of you when you're committed to something that is beyond you? This is what it means. Very powerful idea. So how does this tie in with Meron? So what does it say by when on the first time that God's presence was revealed to the Jewish people as a whole? Rosh Chodesh Nisan. The day of when the Mishkan, the tabernacle, was complete. And the Avodah of Aaron and the Kohanim in the Mishkan. Presence of God is there. And Nadav and Avihu, they come and they bring an offering and they die. Can you imagine on such a holy day, in such a holy place, like, how could that be?
With holy people.
And such holy people. And such holy people, exactly. How could that be? What is the response of Aaron? Vayidaim Aaron. Aaron was silent. Because he understood that this is something beyond him. Something he couldn't fathom. Something that it doesn't say, I don't get it, I don't understand. There's an acceptance of something that's beyond. And he's silent in that acceptance. Because, again, it's beyond us to understand. And actually, who says we want to understand? We don't need to understand. We don't need to seek the reason why. How come? Because if I would know God, I'd be God, as we said before, right? So if I would know why God did it, okay, I'm like God. No. So it's beyond. And sometimes silence is the only thing you can do in that acceptance. That's exactly what we're saying here. That there is an acceptance of something beyond you. That is beyond you getting it. The whole purpose of knowledge is ultimately that you don't know. And others is silence, right? And predicated before we use our minds to understand is an understanding that it is something way beyond. And therefore, what's its value? Just the study itself, because we get connected to that which is beyond, to God himself. We're not just, like, it's like, if you study Einstein's theories, if you study Freud's theories, right? What are you connected to? To them? No, not connected to them. Connected to their ideas, not to them, to their ideas, right? So most people think you study Torah, so you're connected to God's ideas, right? So I have an idea what God wants because I've studied Torah, so I now have a little inkling of what he wants. Not connected to God's ideas, to his wisdom. You're connected to God himself through his wisdom. That's why someone can do better than Freud, like Viktor Frankl did, in my humble estimation. Or there is actually, not even just mine. Right, could do one better. Because he was a student of Freud. He got Freud. And as he writes himself in The Man's Search for Meaning, he says if Freud would have been in the camps like he was in the camps, he wouldn't believe what he believed. He would understand that ultimately seeking meaning in life, something higher and greater that the human beings desires and wants in their lives. So on and so forth. Meaning he upped them one. Because he got him. That's somewhere, So we're not going to learn Torah in a way that we're going to Not because it's God's wisdom. And it's not just we're going to get God's ideas on, right? And how I should lead my life. No. I'm getting God himself. Connected to him. Beyond. That's Bechukosai. Chayk, statutory law. Beyond. So when we are learning, we need to first devote ourselves to that there's the value in that itself, not because I'm getting it, because I'm connecting to that which is beyond me. Now, I still have to understand, but that comes as the second point. The second thing that we need to do is engage with our minds fully, arguing, debating, not letting anything by. With the full awareness of, again, the great it's a great paradox when you think about it.
I still can't understand how I'm supposed to connect with something or someone or an essence that I can't get. I can't understand. I can't.
What can't you?
How am I supposed to connect with something I don't understand and something I can't get? Like, how am I supposed to connect so well?
In human relations, we have that too, in a spousal relationship. As close as I get to my wife and I think I get her, then I realize I don't get her. I don't get her.
That's a male-female thing.
Okay, fine. But that's at least gives us a metaphor. If I can't get my wife, I for sure can't get God. Right? Then I for sure can't, right? Now, some might want to compare the two and, and so on. Jeff, go ahead.
I was just kind of wondering, did the Rebbe have a perspective on Rambam's law? There are 13 fundamental beliefs, one of them being divine punishment and reward, because this seems to be related on some level, in some fashion. I was just kind of wondering, what should our relationship be to that? Should it be that, yes, that's true, but we still won't understand necessarily? Or is there something more granular that we can take away from that?
Very good question. Very good. So, and in light of what we're speaking about over here, where does reward and punishment actually even fit in? Right? We're talking about something way beyond that. So, and the Rambam speaks about reward and punishment as one of the 13 principles of faith. So, so the Rebbe explains that reward and punishment, it means consequential. We recently had this in Tanya, we had it in maybe Pirkei Avos we were learning. That, for example, when you overeat, right, there's a punishment for that. Right, you feel, you feel sick, right, or whatever. You don't feel great when you pig out. Excuse the expression, right? Is that a punishment? It is. It's punishing. It's not like go sit in the corner with a dunce hat, which has no direct correlation to what you did. Reward and punishment, there's a direct consequence of what you do in life to what you will get in life. So you do good, it'll bring good. You do bad, it'll bring bad, right? Now, we don't always see it right away. And it's not only in the world to come will that be. It will be even in this world. I remember there was a chassid in Montreal, the head shliach in Montreal, Rabbi Machkin, his father, Rabbi Peretz Machkin, a famous chassid. He passed away many years ago. A real chassid. In any case, somewhere, I don't know, it was in the 60s, if I remember correctly. Another Montrealer came into private audience with the Rebbe and was lamenting that Peretz Machkin, he's dirt poor and he's got nothing. And he helps him out, but he feels terrible, what kind of life, such a chassid. And then he says, at that time there was a famous Hollywood actress This is like, and he mentions her to the Rebbe. And I don't know if he mentioned her by name or made reference to her. I'm not exactly clear from the, this is like, we're talking 60 years ago. And he makes reference to Marilyn Monroe. How is it that she has everything? And the Rebbe says, just because a person seems on the outside that they have, that doesn't mean on the inside they have completion and that they're happy people. And it was only months later that she took her life, right? After that. And the Rebbe said, the Rebbe didn't say anything about her by the Yechidus, but, just because it doesn't mean. But Peretz, through and through, he's a happy person. Through and through. So reward and punishment, doesn't mean necessarily that you've got the glamour, Hollywood glamour, and you're, this and that, and you've got money and you've got all these things. Inside, you're rotting. Right? So what's reward and punishment? It means consequence of the good that we do and punishment of the bad that we do. But it's a consequence as a result. Now, again, that consequence does not necessarily always direct and immediate. That's something we're going to deal in the third part of Tanya in Igeres HaTshuva. When we speak about Tshuva, we'll deal with that concept, why it's not immediate, specifically in this day and age. But yeah, so it's not a contradiction to this at all, right? Or it fits in well. So that's why the verse can say that you are going to get from when you give yourself over to Torah, when you think about it in a way, you give yourself over in a way that one is, it's engraved in you. Secondly, that you are committed to it beyond, what is, what makes sense to you. You're committed to it of the holiness of it. You're committed to it beyond that I understand that it is an attachment to God beyond my understanding. That will bear wonderful fruit in a person's life. There will be a consequence from that. That's what the verse is telling us. I actually personally see it sometimes in my life, I must tell you. That the more I'm engaged and devoted to learning in the way I should learn, I see how the other things like happen more automatic. As sometimes I'm like, you're worried about small things and this and that, and other things in life that are of a mundane nature, and we got to take care of those things. But sometimes you got to put a lot of effort into it. And sometimes it just goes and flows. Those mundane engagements of life, right? Everything just seems to connect and it's all working out with so little effort. And I see that the more I engage in learning in this manner that we learned over here, the more I see in my personal life how those things just they just fall into place. The more I focus in on those things and don't learn in this manner, the less, the more those things don't flow so easily, and I've got to struggle with that. So what is this saying? We got to struggle somewhere. We're all going to struggle. Adam la'amal yulad. A person was created to toil, to struggle. The question is where? Where are we going to struggle? So we can struggle making a livelihood. We can struggle in our in other areas of life. But if we struggle in Torah in the way we learned here, it will give us some kind of reward. Now, go to work tomorrow. Don't, give up your job tomorrow. When you're learning, be present, be engaged, totally there, in a way that it is becoming engraved in every fiber of your being. That's what you want it to You want the truth of Torah's teachings to be engraved within you, that it becomes a part of you. So much so that you naturally do what you got to do instead of struggling as a result. And at the same time, how do you get there? It's because you're given over to something that's way beyond, right? Way beyond that which I'm going to understand. There's a holiness here that I'm connecting to, period. Now, use my mind totally so I can understand and get it. But know that what I'm getting is far beyond what I understand. I'm getting God himself, an attachment to him. Is that clear? Makes sense? How's that resonate? Resonates? All right. So I know now that I learned Torah because who wants to finish that sentence? Anybody?
It connects me with the divine.
Irma, sorry, go ahead, Irma.
It connects me with the divine.
Connects me with the divine. And how do I learn it? That's what it does. How do I engage in it? That I should connect myself, and that it should
wholeheartedly,
that it becomes engraved in me and a part of me.
Yeah.
Right? On the inside out, in a meaning like the depth from within, meaning even my animal soul, that it appreciates it. Right? What do the animals appreciate? Something that's pleasurable. Do you have a pleasure, a geschmack? Right? You have this is right. The divine soul, it's beyond pleasure. It's just attachment. The animal soul is seeking pleasure. So you can have pleasure from the sweetness of an apple. You can have pleasure from the sweetness of nice music. You can have pleasure from a good idea that, could be from Viktor Frankl. And you can have pleasure from something divine. So the pleasure in something divine, the divine soul isn't seeking pleasure. It's just seeking the connection. The animal soul is seeking the pleasure. So it's getting pleasure, but it's getting a divine pleasure as opposed to just the sweetness of an apple. It's getting the sweetness of something divine. That's it, folks. All right.
Thank you.
And again, so just to tie in again with Lag BaOmer, as we learn in the honor of those holy souls, so there's something beyond that we don't get, but we are pained, and at the same time, we are silent because it is beyond us. And as the Rebbe would say that, of course, we need to increase in light, do another mitzvah, learn more Torah for their neshamas and for those who need a speedy recovery, so we can bring greater light in the place of darkness. All right, folks. Tomorrow morning, Tanya, we have, and Wednesday night, for those who didn't get a chance to sign up for the Mashiach course, this Wednesday night, you don't want to miss it. Very exciting. I'm extremely excited. Many of you got your books already. Yeah, okay, great. And we're looking forward to a great time together. For those who want to participate and haven't yet, if you want to contact me, private message me, please do. Oh, there you got it. And I'm looking forward. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Rabbi. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Be well.